Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Megan, and I have a special guest today because we all need to congratulate Joe and his wife for having a new baby boy. So he's out on paternity leave unofficially because he doesn't really work with me, but he's not here for the podcast today. So instead, we have Nicole Parks, who is joining us to talk about things that keep us up at night. And we both apparently took that too literally and could not fall asleep last night. So hopefully we are coherent and have a good conversation today.
Exactly.
Welcome, Nicole. Do you want to I know like you've been one of the active members with Do Better when we've been recording podcasts, but do you just want to do like a short introduction of yourself for folks?
Sure. Yeah. So if you don't know who I am the Chief Visionary Officer for Rooted Consultation. My main purpose and our main purpose right now is just to expand the science of behavior analysis. And my special interests personally are in clinical and forensic ABA applications. And a lot of my focus right now is on providing fieldwork supervision to make sure that the next generation of behavior analysts feel like they can apply the science in lots of other places besides autism therapy.
I love it. And you do you have I feel like I'm so disorganized right now, but you're usually advertising something, but you have something coming up soon, the forensic. Are you doing
I
another
do.
forensic one?
Yeah, tomorrow I am doing a CEU on behavioral forensics, the Gainesville Ripper case. It's the 35th anniversary this month of those
Wow.
murders. And I went to college at the University of Florida. So that is a very big thing in that area. So I kind of wanted to honor the victims, but also use it as a case to talk about forensic behavior assessment. So,
Wow, interesting. So sometimes I'm delayed in getting these published, but if I do get this published today, for those of you who happen to listen to it, that's August 27th, and I'll put the link. If is the registration still open or no?
yep, registration's still open. I'm doing the final push today. So,
All right, cool. Well, then I'll try to get it up. And then if folks are listening, you can check it out. And Nicole's done a few of these different ones. If you're looking for unique ways to think about the science and you're a little over hearing about, autism all the time. I personally am never that person. But I know that there are plenty out there. So I love that you're not offering, that you have these opportunities for people to learn in different ways about our science. So before we started recording, we were talking about how there's like things that might keep us up at night in the field, and you mentioned like it seems like there's more hot button topics happening or discussions happening right now. And then I said, I'm kind of like all over the place at the moment and haven't really been online. So I feel like I'm out of the loop. And you said maybe that's not a bad thing. But what it made me think of is when I have been in the loop and in like when you're in these discussions and you're so entrenched in it, it feels like everyone obviously knows that these discussions are happening and all the like potential drama or stress or whatever that's like culminating online is for all 70,000 plus BCBAs like are part of the discussion, and then you find out it's like 10 of you. I don't know if that's the case for the ones you're involved in currently, but I'm always so surprised. I'll be at a conference and be like, did you hear about such and such? And people will look at me and be like, what are you talking about? Like, oh, that thing that caused me a lot of distress, and I spent like weeks trying to help people navigate and like smooth out. Only a few of us knew about that. Like that wasn't broadcast to the whole entire field.
yeah, I will say that the good news is I feel like the things I'm hearing people talk about, it's really feels like it's in they are call outs. I will say that. Um, I think we're moving past call-ins. I don't know, maybe they're still call-ins, call-outs, whatever. I think people saying things that are not like popular, but in a way that hopefully will move the field forward. And I do feel like there seems to be like a stirring of people that are like, yeah, I don't think I want to settle for this anymore. So like, how can we kind of like work together to change some of these things? So it doesn't feel like it's just people shouting into the void, if that makes any sense,
Yeah.
which makes it feel more productive and makes me feel more inspired and like optimistic that that means that things are kind of like going to start shifting in a good direction. But you
Yeah.
never know how these things could go. They could turn divisive. They could be a unifying thing. You kind of never know how that's going to happen.
Yeah, this is true. Well, so speaking of that, so for me, I don't know, like I said, I'm kind of out of the loop. So for the topic today, things that keep us up at night, I thought since you seem to be more in the loop, if there's any particular ones that you wanted to spotlight, we could chat about them for a few minutes. And then if of course I always have things to say. So I'm sure I'll have things to say as well.
Well, I would say the one that's keeping me up at night, and I have kind of let this die because I'm not trying to like rock the boat too much. But you and I have talked about this like briefly, but it's this idea of state licensure and
Hmm.
like how that does or doesn't apply
Yeah.
to behavior analysts based on the work that they're doing. So, my interpretation has been that if you are doing behavior analysis with anyone, with any kind of client, and you are working with clients that are in a state that has licensure, that you need to be licensed in that state to do that. And what I'm finding is there seems to be a good number of people who kind of feel like those state licensure laws were made for autism therapy. Like that was their purpose. And so if you're not working in autism therapy, maybe licensure doesn't totally apply to you.
Yeah.
Or there might be ways to frame what you're doing so that you are not quote unquote doing behavior analysis, so that you fall outside the confines of those licensure requirements.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me, I guess, I guess it kind of never occurred to me, it should have, but it kind of never occurred to me that we'd all have different interpretations of
Hmm.
what licensure is supposed to mean. Like to me, it seemed pretty cut and dry. Like our certification, people pretty well understand, like you need the certification if you want to call yourself a BCBA. And I thought licensure was kind of the same thing. Like we all just kind of understood that when state licensure started popping up, that meant if we want to continue being a BCBA and practicing in those states, that that's kind of what we have to do. Um, and it like never occurred to me that people would think that they could opt out of that based on like what they're doing exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is anyone regulating this? And the problem with it is because I deal with this with just providing fieldwork supervision. Getting licensed in a million states to provide that is infuriating. I won't even get on the soapbox about that. But even when you reach out to the boards to ask them specifically, because I'll read the statute and some statutes make it very clear that you have to, be licensed there to provide supervision. Some don't. And even when you reach out to the boards and ask them explicitly, they'll be like, well, we can't comment on that basically, or we are not
Yeah.
allowed to give you directions. And I'm like, well, then who is? Because you're the one that's running it. Um, so it's very strange that like I don't know, it just kind of seems like the BACB or somebody would have given some kind of direction on this when it comes to licensure, or there would be something out there that you could go to and be like, this is what we intended with this or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's the one that's driving me crazy because I'm very like I'm a big rule follower. I'm a Virgo, and so like I'm like we should all be following rules if there's rules, even if I don't like them, I'll follow the rules. So I don't know.
Um, but what it reminds me of, and we talked about this previously, so I know it might be boring for you, but for listeners, when I was in Virginia, licensure didn't exist yet. This was like back in 2010. And it was starting to become a thing that was being promoted because Virginia passed a health insurance mandate. And in the health insurance mandate, it said they will require it by licensed behavior analyst. But there was no licensure for behavior analysts. So then we had like that was the only way they would pass it. So then, of course, a whole movement had to happen to like get the, government to approve creating a licensure for behavior analysts. And what was really interesting when I went through that whole process was the number of people who were disinterested in participating was wild to me. Like I connected and tried to reach out to so many, like there was several hundred behavior analysts in the state at the time. And I think there ended up being like 5 or 10 of us that showed up at the Capitol, met with the legislators, tried to explain what we do and why we need this, all this kind of stuff. And one of the things that was really interesting is when I would contact people, they would be like, "Well, I work in the schools, so this doesn't apply to me." And I'm like, "Oh my." Nope, that's not true. Although they did end up in Virginia specifically, they put in some language because there was a lot of people working in Virginia already, and like what could be defined based on how they were doing the law would count as behavior analysis, right? Like the things that they were doing, but they weren't BCBAs. And they had enough, training in their career to do the things they were doing. So they didn't want the new law to affect those people. So they did put in some exemptions of like if you're working in certain settings or if you have other certain background or whatever, if you're licensed in a certain other area. I don't even remember what they all were anymore because I don't live in Virginia and this was years ago. 15, it's crazy. It was 15 years ago by now. Um, but it's still like there were plenty of people where it did apply, but they thought because they weren't billing insurance that it didn't affect them. And it was like, no, this is going to affect everyone unless you're part of this like small exemption class. So even in the state where they were practicing, we were having issues getting people to understand the importance of what was happening. Um, but anyway, so I definitely get like obviously as we go across state lines and there's like so many different things. And of course, when I was in school, this was not something that was discussed because licensure didn't exist when I was in school. I don't know how much programs cover any of this now. I do remember when I was an undergrad for psychology, this was a thing that was talked about. Like if you go on to become like a clinical psychologist or a counselor or whatever, you'll whatever state you go to, you'll need to get licensed. And like it was a big discussion even in undergrad. So I would hope that grad programs are talking about this now, of like helping people understand that licensure is a thing in many states at this point. And when you move to different states, you need to know, you need to familiarize yourself with the laws. I reached out to a friend who has helped me with a lot of the various advocacy and insurance things. And we ultimately decided, but I haven't had a chance to do it yet. I can't think of a resource yet, but I know APBA, when licensure was first starting, APBA was like leading the way in helping people like Dr. Gina Green, helping to get better licensure laws on the books because some places were doing it without the support of anyone, again, out of whatever necessity was existing there. And the laws ended up being awful and really detrimental to the behavior analysts in the state. So APBA was really on top of let's get ahead of this and like help the states we can get better laws in place. But I don't know, like it would be really nice, especially from like the practice side, if there was a resource that I know they can't give like legal advice, but I would love there to be a resource that goes state by state and like outlines, the various things because in some states it's it's very clear that this is the practice of behavior analysis. This is how it's defined. And anyone, no matter what they call themselves, if you are doing these things, you must be licensed or be covered by this other thing. And then in other states, it's vague or nothing like that, or they don't have licensure at all. So it'd be really nice to have a guide of some sort where it's, much more clear. I know some people who've even they're living in states where the licensure is so ridiculous and only pinpoints BCBAs that they've given up their BCBA because they're like, I'm an educational consultant by and large, but just because I have BCBA after my name, they're putting additional requirements on me, even though I don't do anything different than these other educational consultants out here who don't have a BCBA. So they ultimately decided to stop being a BCBA and just focus on being an educational consultant. So there's things like that too that are like almost too far reaching, where simply because you have the letters, you all of a sudden, even though people might be practicing behavior analysis that don't have the letters, they're okay. But just because you have the letters, you're not okay. It's like, what? So the people who actually are trained in this have more oversight, and the people who aren't have no oversight. That doesn't make any sense. But
Nope.
Have you seen anything? Have you seen any resources or any like conference presentations or anything focused on this lately?
I have not.
I haven't
No.
either. Yeah.
And I know in well, for my graduate program, I was in Florida and we don't have licensure. And I don't think
Yeah.
Florida will ever get licensure because they already have statutes
Well, we
governing
tried.
the
They've tried
practice.
to get it here, but the government is like anti-regulation unless you're looking at the schools. But but I don't want to go down a political route, but they definitely are very happy to regulate certain things.
Yeah.
But they're anti-regulation in a lot of ways. So the times when FABA and like the legal legislative team have tried to work with the government to get licensure, it hasn't been successful.
Yeah. Um, so we didn't talk about that, I think, because it wasn't really a thing. But I did, my master's is technically in counseling with a focus in applied behavior analysis. So we did talk about like that aspect of it. Like if you were going to be a licensed mental health counselor or something, you have to think about licensure or whatever. But I haven't seen anyone really talking about it or doing anything about it.
Yeah.
Um, and it'd be nice if there, if like, it'd be nice for my purposes with supervision. It'd be nice if we could agree there could just be an exemption if someone's just getting supervised field work. Like, unless I guess they're working um, in a clinic, maybe like with clients that have insurance. I don't know. Because the majority of my supervisees are not RBT, so they're not working in that setting, anyways.
Yeah.
Um, but it just makes it like that much harder to get fieldwork supervision
Yeah.
from a qualified person that has experience because if you're relegated to only people in your state or people that want to get licensed, I mean, licensure is complicated and expensive.
Yeah.
I would prefer not to be licensed in like 9,000 states.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
um, for the sheer upkeep alone and the fact that I have to get fingerprinted every time and blah, 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 etc.
Yeah. It'd be nice
But
if there were a reciprocal license too. Like I know other professions have things like that where it's, if you're licensed in your state, all you have to do, maybe you pay a fee or something, but it's not as much and you don't have to go through the whole, if your state has like the background check and all the things that the other state has, you just sign a pay, show that you're licensed and blah blah. I don't know if that's a thing that'll come at some point, but
well, what I found is like there are some states, so you'll apply saying you're getting a reciprocal license, and but it changes nothing. You still have to pay the same fees. You have to do all the same stuff.
what's the
But
point?
actually, you have to do more stuff because then they're like, oh, you're already licensed in other states. Well, now we want verification from those states
Oh my
that
gosh.
you're licensed. So then you can pay for those verifications too. So I'm like, how is doing the reciprocal
Yeah.
one better than just doing it in general? I'm like, I don't think you understand what the point of the reciprocal
Yeah.
is because it's not this.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so I don't know. That's definitely like one thing I guess that's kind of been on my mind. And then something I think maybe that's more um, aligned with you and your in the autism world, although you don't have to deal with insurance, you lucky dog. But there's definitely a lot of talk about what do we do about everything that's kind of happening, in autism therapy world. Um, I feel like we're running up against the same issues kind of like over and over again. And I hear very brilliant people talking about the same issues over and over again, but I have yet to hear anyone actually like have a solution
Yeah.
to anything that works. Um, so like the podcast I was listening to this morning, um, it was talking about like company culture and psychological safety and how that affects like RBT turnover and um, clients and everything like that. And it's like, I don't know how we ever solve the RBT turnover problem. Like,
Right.
I don't know how to fix that. I have like thought about it and thought about it and actually experimented and tried different things. I'm at a loss for how you do that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I'm kind of curious if the new requirement from the BACB for the professional development, if that will help make it better or worse. Like I think it, ooh, okay, am I still there? It looks like I froze for a second.
yeah,
Um,
you're still there.
better in the sense that hopefully RBTs feel more supported if companies are putting more behind like giving professional development, if they take it seriously. I think that could help people feel more supported, and then maybe you have less turnover. Or it could make it worse if people are feeling like they have to seek their own professional development, or like they're given like crappy stuff that like doesn't really help, or it's like another expense for the RBTs who are already on limited funds. And so then they might jump ships like from, a grass is greener situation of like, well, this company has good professional development and you don't, so I'm going to leave or whatever. So I'm curious to see if that like if it improves things or if it makes things worse. Um, and then
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the issues that come up, whether it's insurance or the RBT turnover, it feels like these are issues society is facing too. Like it's not just field specific. You see things, especially on like Instagram or TikTok now, of like different doctors and stuff posting these horror stories about patients that they wanted, needed certain procedures and it was definitely medically necessary, but the insurance is like denying it, like what does the doctor know, kind of stuff, which is what we feel like all the time when we're submitting plans to insurance too. So like it's like there's these bigger level advocacy things that need to happen, not just specific to behavior analysis. I know we have amazing people. I don't want to toot my own horn. I used to be one of those people. Like back in the day, I was the one, I was going to the Capitol and like doing the things to advocate, and then life takes you other places. But we still have like some of those same people, like Rebecca Womack and folks at CASP and stuff like that, who are doing that advocacy work for behavior analysis specifically, but even like bigger picture. Maybe Nicole, that's what some of your upcoming trainings are going to focus on, is like, large scale advocacy. I don't know that any of it will be successful with the current administration that we have,
Mhm.
but the momentum should be there because people are getting frustrated and upset with like life in general. So being able to be prepared for like the next round of elections to, have that. I know Megan Kirby, she's a BCBA. Are you familiar with her at all?
I have heard of her, yes.
So she used to do a lot of like discussion around, but her and Shane Spiker and I feel bad that I can't remember. It's Kirby Spiker. I think there were one or two other on the humble behaviorism redo article that came out in 2022. But Megan and I have known each other from the Virginia licensure stuff and when like CPT codes were first getting done and all that stuff. But she's always been like very on top of things in terms of like a social justice standpoint. And they just published a paper that she was posting about, and I saved it, but now I can't remember. Even this is why I don't stay in the loop on things, because my brain doesn't work anymore. But it was a good one. It was about like something advocacy related. I'll have to look. I'll look while you talk next. But point being, there are people who've like tried to do like bigger like movements, and I think that um off and on in the field that's happened. Like, you're going to be presenting at Rejected about Anthony Biglin, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so he's obviously a big one that's been, using behavior science to try to do like bigger, larger scale things. And I think the more we can try to m get that momentum of like how upset people are getting about this stuff and like do larger scale changes, it just takes forever. But I don't see I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer, but I don't see a lot of the issues that people face besides having like tips and tricks with insurance changing until the whole system changes.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like insurance and coverage, and I mean, that's like one whole side of things. But I feel like just the RBT business model and the ABA therapy business model is a tough one because I feel like um, I am pro RBT as a worker. I am pro worker. I am pro psychological safety. I'll be presenting on that at the Business of ABA conference, not this weekend, but next. I'm pro all of those things. But on the same hand, I just said this on a podcast, I don't love the RBT credential because I feel like in some ways it's changed the dynamics of a lot of things. There are some very fabulous like RBTs out there that I absolutely adore. And I feel like there are definitely RBTs that are not treated the way they should be and not given the support that they should and the training that they should. But I also know that I have seen firsthand uh, giving RBTs all of those things and they'll still leave for $1.
Yeah.
Um, and it's hard because you have to look at the business aspect of things if you're a business owner, especially if you're a small business owner. Okay. If you are not a huge conglomerate that has outfits everywhere and you can just close down like one region because it's not performing well or whatever, um, you have to try to counterbalance those things. And it's so hard to both empower an RBT. Like I love the idea of empowering an RBT that this is a professional position. You are a skilled person. We really value your input, but then like they're not held to the same professional standards that BCBAs are most of the time, right? Like they could just walk in and be like, I quit today. And there's not really repercussions against that.
Yeah.
They don't have the same client abandonment requirements or things with the board that the BCBAs do. Like ultimately, it's like almost like our job as the BCBA to make sure they're not doing these kinds of things. Which how are we supposed to control this person?
Right.
So it's very hard to be like, let me treat you as a professional, let me honor your position and really help you grow and also encourage you that you could be an RBT for life because I do agree that not everyone needs to become a BCBA. I do feel like you should be able to like make a good living and a happy sustainable living as an RBT that moves up in different positions. But it's hard to have that mindset with a person who also feels like, well, I could just like not come to work anytime I don't feel like it because I want to go on lots of vacations, or I'm just going to quit. I'm just going to walk in and quit tomorrow because I found a place that'll pay me an extra dollar an hour. If they're not treating the position in a professional manner, then it's really, really hard because
Yeah.
some people come in and they treat it like, you know, whatever, like I can just not be there, like not like they're not providing a medically necessary service and they can just dip out whenever they feel like it. And that ultimately then puts you in a pickle because you're abandoning like the family. Now they're going without services. The BCBA is overworked because now they're covering sessions or they have to bring in somebody else and train them right away. And then of course we're going to say, well, the training wasn't good enough. But you're like, well, yeah, but also it's like I either try to train this person to the best of my ability and get them in there so the family has services, or I just keep leaving the family without services. So we're like kind of like stacking the deck against people making good decisions in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's just like it just ends up causing this like ongoing ripple effect in these companies that it's so hard to fix. And you'll go to I've been to so many like presentations at conferences or whatever, and you can get so inspired by this company being like, look at our amazing training plan. It's beautiful. And you're like, yes, it is. How often do you have to deviate from that because of whatever? Because someone just walked in and quit on you or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
That's the like, I would love to see someone present on that. Like, I would love to see just a business owner come in there and just be like, let me tell you, like, let me tell you about everything I've done. This is how good I've been able to get it. And I've tried my best or whatever, like almost like just a case study. And I see some business owners out there that seem like they're doing a really good job. And I try to give them like accolades as much as I can on social media and stuff because I'm like, you seem like you're doing, you know, really great. And so whatever you're doing, I'd actually love to talk to you and figure out like how do you not have these problems?
Right.
Maybe we can replicate it or something.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I went on a little bit of a tangent there, but I've been trying to solve these problems for a long time and it gets frustrating because I'm not a person that likes to feel like I can't come up with a solution for something.
Well, and there's so many variables that are outside of your control, so it makes it a little bit harder too. But
Yeah.
I wonder if there's like lessons to be learned. I don't know. I haven't done any Google Scholar searches or anything to see if there's information in journals, or even just Google searches that, people might be sharing their own expertise. But like in similar fields, when you think about the RBT being an entry level position, right? So looking at things like this is what I think makes the RBT so difficult because it's technically an entry level position and it requires so much of someone beyond what you would expect for an entry level position. But there's other jobs out there like that that I think like daycare workers or paraprofessionals in the school or assistants like I don't know like how much like some how much what the equal comparison is, but some of the medical field, like not nurses, because obviously nursing school and all that stuff, but there's people working in hospital and like medical settings that are coming in as an entry level person, doing various things within the hospital. And I'm sure because all of those things have existed much longer that people have looked at how do you create cultures and all that. But even if we had all of that at our fingertips, everything is changing so rapidly right now, right? So it's like whoever we might be hiring and what their expectations are. I love that there's so much more of a focus on work-life balance and all of that, but creating like it used to be, especially for our parents' generation and before, you were beholden to your job and you had to be, and like everything came first for the company and the position you had so that you could provide for your family and blah blah, and people had all this like guilt and feeling bad if they didn't do their job, right? And thankfully that's changed because I don't want to be living in that kind of situation. However, finding that balance where like everything will fall apart if we don't care at all about the job and like the people and all this kind of stuff too. And I hear what you're saying. Like it feels like some people are pouring everything they can into growing and like they care more about the job for that person than the person cares for themselves. And so I don't know what the answer is, unfortunately. I don't have one. But I'm just curious and thinking like I feel like there have to be people who are studying this and like understanding these types of things. I just don't know who those people are and where those answers lie.
I think you brought up some really interesting points with the other entry level positions. And there's a couple things I can think of that make it harder, I guess, to replicate in our field. Because when I think about, I know you said not necessarily nursing, but I'm thinking even just like LPNs or medical assistants or whatever in the hospital, but even to some level, nurses, right? The way they staff them is you can have people that are like full-time, part-time PRN, right? And people
Yep.
know if they're on PRN, they're essentially like, they're on call certain times. And so, basically like you don't make plans. Maybe they get some kind of like on-call pay only if they get called in. I'm not sure exactly how all that works. But we don't utilize systems like that with RBTs because our big thing is you have to be pairing with these clients, right? You have to have this like therapeutic relationship. And if I just pair little Billy with whoever this day because their regular RBT called out sick, their parents are not going to be happy about it. And this session might be a wash because there's no relationship there, and the RBT spending the majority of the time just trying to get to know little Billy and his plan and then never going to see him again, or maybe not see him again for a month. Whereas if you're a nurse, like you're having new patients every day. So it doesn't matter. As long as you know how to come in, draw blood, be nice, have a good bedside manner or whatever, it doesn't matter who your patients are. They just are who they are that day. So I think it's hard to use some of those same systems that we would use when we're asking for that level of connection with a person and that level of familiarity with a person, which makes it really hard to swap people out and sub people out and have like that kind of situation. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I was going to say, kind of related to that and talking about the work life balance, because I've thought about this a lot too. Work life balance is harder for some fields, right? Like if you're a nurse,
Yep.
it's just understood that you work 12-hour shifts or you
Yeah.
work holidays or you work weekends, or hey, if there's a natural disaster and you're on call for the disaster crew, you might be at the hospital for 48 hours or 72 hours. If you're a police officer or you're fire, you work for the fire department, like there's just certain jobs where it's just like These are just like really like high level, not high level, but like high um needs, I guess, jobs or whatever, where like you're just not going to have, you can't just like be calling out whenever, and you're going to have to do some of that stuff. And I think part of it in some levels too is like it's hard because RBTs and BCBAs, everybody like needs a break when you're in a caring and helping profession. But it's
Mhm.
also really hard in our field because it's not like if you just had an office job and like your paperwork might sit there for a couple days
Yeah.
and then you just come back and catch up on it, or someone else can fill in answering some phone calls. If you're not there, the service isn't happening.
Yep.
So it's like really hard to like balance those two things out. So I'd say those are like my kind of thoughts about what you said.
Yeah. And I think I mean, that's one of those things too where there's just like such a demand and not enough people. So hopefully some
Mm-hmm.
of that kind of levels out at some point. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever see shifts happen where there's less of a one-on-one and more of like a small group situation for clients. And that's a whole other different insurance battle. But obviously that would help from like a potentially from a staffing and like burnout standpoint. Um, not needing so many people because not everyone needs like even for like nurses and stuff, if they're at a hospital they usually have like 5 or 10 patients that they're rotating through at one time, or the patients are coming in, for 5, 10 minutes and then it's on to the next one. It's not 2 hours with one person, or
Mm-hmm.
longer. So that's a whole other like logistical issue. But I'm curious, like when you think about these positions where like you were saying, it's the work-life balance. It's, kind of known that it's not what, an office job would necessarily be, but people still choose these careers and they choose these paths. And a lot of people experience HRE from it too. Like they're happy, relaxed, and engaged by being in these like high demand situations. So I'm sure, I know it probably doesn't sound super behavioral, but I am sure there has to be measures that have been created within like human resources or OBM to really assess like the strengths and weaknesses or certain profiles of people that they're like these types of jobs are what they're motivated by and are more
Mm-hmm.
suited for compared to like other positions. So I don't know if anyone's ever going to make something like that, but I think I have like a love-hate relationship with some of those screeners because obviously if you're just relying on a screener, it could kick out someone that would actually be a really good fit. But I feel like there's probably certain things, I don't know what they are. But I like when I very first started, even before all these issues came up, I remember when I first started my company in Virginia, navigation behavioral consulting, we were like not really wanting to bring on new people, but we had a huge wait list. And I was like, how do I decide who to bring on? Because we have a really good thing going here. And I don't want to create a situation where we hire someone who messes it all up, you know? And there was nothing that existed then. As far as I know, there's nothing that exists now. But I really wanted something where it could be like, we do this little interview assessment with you, and it helps us identify red flags of like, is this a good fit for you? Because this job is not a good fit for everyone, and we just need to be realistic about that. And we made our own little like thing, and it worked well for us. We had a few role playing type things we did, and we looked at how people responded to feedback and stuff like that. And for that round of hiring that we did, it did work out really well. Pretty much everyone ended up staying with us for a good amount of time. And if they moved on, it was more because they either were leaving the field entirely to do something else or they were like leaving the area.
Mm-hmm.
But that was that one time in that one situation with that group of people. But I would love, like, I just think, it would be nice, especially since so many people use different hiring tools now, to have some sort of screener that could help people identify this person is well suited, like based on what's motivating and like driving them for a position like this, and this person would be better for a different position.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard too because I want playful people.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people who are like more playful and fun are usually more laid back. And I don't want to like stereotype, but generally speaking, the more laid back people are, the more the higher the probability is that they're going to say, "Oh, well, I could just leave this job and go to a different job." It's not a big deal. They don't take everything as seriously.
Mm-hmm.
My rambling is done.
Yeah, I mean, I want the playful people too. I find that, I mean, you really have to, at the end of the day, you have to care about more than a paycheck. I mean, you just do.
Yep.
I mean, early in my career, like my first job out of college, I dealt with very severe problem behavior. It never occurred to me to quit that job. I got paid $10 an hour to get beat up more days than not and have people in basket holds for up to an hour at a time. And the thing that made it reinforcing for me was I did have good coworkers and we all commiserated with each other about the fact that we were in this together or whatever. But also, like, this was my career. Like, I wanted to be doing this for the rest of my life, as far as I knew, and it has been that case. And that got me through that. Now, I'm not saying that it would have been nice if I had more support back then. And I'm glad that people nowadays get more support than I did, and not just thrown to the wolves. But the things that get you through those hard times, I think, is just like this greater, desire or greater, it's the greater good or whatever. That I'm just like, now would I have stayed in that same exact job for a bajillion years? I don't know. I probably eventually would have gotten old and been like, listen, I'm too old for basket holds anymore. I can't do this anymore. Um, and I just don't want to. It's not fun for me. But I don't know. And so the RBTs that I have seen over the years that have stayed at companies for years and have gone on to, some of them become BCBAs themselves. They were just tenacious and they were very passionate about the kids and about the field from the very beginning, basically.
Hmm.
And that's really what set them apart from other ones. Other ones I could tell, some of them you could tell they were just there for a time. I always ask people, what are your long-term professional goals? Because I just kind of want to know. And then you can peg some people where they're like, oh, well, eventually I'm going to go to med school or whatever, so they're only going to be there for a time. And then there's other people where you can kind of tell even by their resume, they're just kind of like floating around through life, kind of just trying out different things. And they may become an RBT and fall in love with the science and stay, but there's also a 50% chance that that's just going to be the next thing that they tried. And they're like, nah, I'm kind of out of here. But it's hard, and obviously companies have tried things like making people sign contracts and all this other kind of non-compete clauses and all. I don't believe in any of that stuff. I think that you should only want someone working for you because they want to be there. Like, why would you
Yeah.
want to trap somebody in a job with you? I don't understand that.
Yeah.
That does not set anything up for success, but I know that's just businesses afraid of losing their investment in the training and everything.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's just kind of the cost of doing business, but it sucks when you spend a lot of time and energy and money in a person and they just like dip on you, you know? And I think we tell employees all the time, a job will replace you in an instant. And sometimes I feel like I need to tell myself as a supervisor, like an employee will replace you in an instant.
Yeah.
Maybe you also should
Go
not
both
get so
ways.
attached because you might think you have a great relationship with somebody and that you've given them everything you possibly could, and they could still come in and break your heart and be like, I'm leaving.
Yep.
I just don't want to be here anymore.
Yep.
So who
That is
knows?
true.
I don't know.
Well, and that like for me brings up when you were talking about, how like this kind of investing in and like building this professional and stuff like that. I wonder what kinds of conversations businesses are having about like essentially the two-way street, like, hey, we're here to support you and we're creating a culture that's like reciprocal. So like what are some ways that you picture you're supporting this and like having more of an open and curious conversation of because I think sometimes too we assume things we've come up with to do for people is support, but they
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily perceive it that way. So
Mm-hmm.
having like a starting off like open and curious conversation of like, I as the owner or as your supervisor am here to support you. What does that look like for you? And then you're here to also support this business or like these patients or clients or whatever. What does that look like? And like each party kind of shares what that is and talks about the values and the company culture and all that kind of stuff and sort of gets that all formalized. And so one person's supports might look different than another person, but that just having that conversation and kind of getting everyone on the same page and like I don't know, it's probably too involved, but even having some sort of monthly or quarterly review that's not like your typical performance review, but it's like, okay, these are the things we said I would do to support you. How am I doing on those things? These are the
Mhm.
things you said you were going to do to help support the clients. How is that going for you? And what are the roadblocks and like how can we but we bring that conversation back to help keep it fresh and like this is why we're here and this is how we're creating this like community together and it's not just a 9 to 5 like you're not just clocking in and clocking out but we're
Mhm.
building something together.
I love that kind of like an alignment check-in
Yeah.
instead of like a, yeah, because I mean, I feel like, performance reviews should be a two-way street. Like it's not just about how you're performing as an employee, it's like how am I performing as a supervisor or um, as a company. And again, that's a lot of what, the podcast today was talking about was kind of like companies, it's getting to where all companies have the same buzzwords now because they've learned
Hmm.
the buzzwords that attract people
Yep.
and that they're almost becoming red flags. And so it's kind of hard because if those truly are your values, some of them, right? Then you're like, how do I prove that I really mean it when I say XYZ thing? That
Yep.
that's like, I do want to do that. I know someone else might be like saying that and they're not acting on it, but like I genuinely want to do that. And it's hard because it's just like any other relationship where you have to earn trust with each other over time. So you can't just expect like they're going to trust you that you're doing those things. And you can't 100% trust them when they say whatever, but you're kind of going in on a little bit of faith, I guess,
Yep.
um, on both ends.
Yep.
What was your like biggest struggle as a business owner when it came to staffing and stuff like that?
Well, we didn't, I mean, the dynamic was so different back then. And we lived in an area, it was like a military area. And so there were a lot of people, especially military wives that were in the area that would like work in the field and then, get stationed somewhere else and have to leave. Like they didn't want to leave the company, but they had to. So that
Mm-hmm.
was a whole separate thing. But usually, thankfully, for that kind of stuff, you knew like a year ahead of time,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, we're getting stationed here, and so we know when this person's leaving or whatever. Um, for me, it was more, I guess, of like my own personal thing where I have a tendency to give a lot to people and like not take care of myself. So when I was
Mm-hmm.
making decisions, it was usually around what would best benefit it was like the employees. And I wasn't, well, I'm not also like, I'm not like a big picture person and I'm more like drilled down. So like what worked for like having 5 employees, if the company were to grow, which it didn't because we didn't want it to, but say it were to grow to like 100 employees, it would not have been a feasible system, right? Like it was something that worked well for the 5, but it was very individualized and it was not scalable at all. I've even had people ask me like, "Hey, do you want to take a job with our company and help us scale stuff?" And I'm like, "Nope, you do not want me for that." Let me help you problem solve your cases. You do not want me scaling anything ever. That is not my forte at all. I look so like this is what's happening right here in front of me. I don't picture like anything out there. But a lot of it was just more of like these random things that would happen, like TRICARE not paying or a person you thought was a really good employee doing something really unexpected that caused a whole lot of chaos. And just it felt like constantly putting out fires that you just couldn't even predict. Like you could have all the policies and procedures and support in place that you possibly could, and then you'd wake up to like an email about some disaster, and it was just like, seriously, why do people do this? Like, no,
Uh, yes. Is there a business owner anywhere that is not putting out fires? It
Yeah.
isn't just like, oh, I got through today and nothing set on fire. I am like the exact opposite of you when it comes to thinking about stuff. So whenever I'm thinking about policies, I am trying to predict every loophole that someone could think of
My
out
brain
of the
doesn't work like
policy.
that. And I swear, like my marketing director, Gino, I swear he doesn't believe me. Like it just doesn't. It doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
What's so wild is I can see a client or anyone like doing something and all these possibilities and variables and things like calculate in my head super fast. But if it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, create a policy or like even like let's drive from here to there, what are all the bad things or good things that could happen? Like what are all the things we would have to plan for? Like we're just driving. What are you talking about? Like we're gonna get in the car and drive, and that's what's gonna
Yeah.
happen. And if something comes up, we'll figure it out when it happens. Like my brain just doesn't do that.
Mm-hmm. My brain like will not shut off because it's like run this scenario, run this scenario, run this scenario. Well, at scale, this would work like this, and it wouldn't work like this. And is this possible if we had like 20, 30, whatever clients? And sometimes it'll even be like, well, this is not a problem we really have right now. Like, I know, but it'll be a problem in the future. So let's go ahead and plan for it
Yeah. Does
now
it
because I
ever
see it
cause like
happening.
fatigue or freeze where it's like you're doing it so much like nothing gets done because you're predicting too many things?
Surprisingly, I am not the type of person either that will sit there and like will only let something release when it's perfect type thing because I absolutely feel like I have a lot of trust and confidence in my decision making. So I feel like I've run this through the ringer of my brain a couple times and now we just got to road test it because I know something's going to happen that I did not predict and I have to just go ahead and get it out there and test it and refine it. And I just
Yeah.
kind of know like this is going to have to be refined. So luckily, I do think that way. Otherwise, I would probably be in my head 24/7. Like, never mind. No policy is better than a policy that we're going to have to rewrite. But I'm basically like, you're going to have to rewrite policy. It's going to happen. But I want it to be like the best possible version of the policy when I put it out the first time because rewriting policy stinks. I don't
Yeah.
want to do it. I don't
Yeah.
have to.
It does. It
Um,
definitely does.
yeah. And most people do not, refresh their policies as often as they should. They just kind of like let them ride out for 10 years. You'll
If they
dust
even
off their
have a
like,
policy.
yeah, you'll dust off that employee handbook and be like, are y'all still doing this? They're like, oh, stop doing that back in like 2020. I'm like, why
Yeah.
is it still in here?
Yeah.
We just tell people by word of mouth what we're doing these days. I'm like, okay, cool. See,
Um,
you didn't think we could talk for an hour. Look at
oh, I
that.
knew we could talk for an hour. I just didn't know if we were gonna have the energy for it since we both didn't sleep well last night. But um, what was I gonna say? Oh, we only have a few minutes, but I'm just gonna like put this nugget because I think I'm gonna talk to Joe about for our September. We're gonna be changing our recording day to a Friday. I don't know which one. And it might end up being sporadic, like whatever Fridays we each have available for the rest of the year. But we had such a good stretch of like being able to do it on the same day every month. But being a new dad and having a new job obviously changes things. So uh but one of the things that has been coming up for me, especially with planning the Rejected conference for December, is what is our operational definition of an expert? So there's been like the few studies that came out this year talking about expertise for conferences and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't really get in the little debate, or not, maybe it was big. I don't know. I saw people posting about their thoughts and stuff online, but I didn't really participate. But we are going to have some things coming out around that. And um, I'm hoping for September that will be our topic and like read maybe we can like try to encourage folks to read the articles to come like to discuss a little bit more. But that's
Mm-hmm.
one that's been really I feel like that is one of the biggest divides in our field right now is the people who came into this field motivated and experiencing reinforcement from the academic nature of things and the
Mm-hmm.
practitioners. And that's been the biggest divide. Like, I'm not saying anything new. Like, I know, like, we can look back at presidential addresses and various things that have happened over the past, like, 30 years, even probably 50, maybe even more, that seems to be a constant, but it feels really big right now with, like, the publications that are coming out from, like, certain folks who are, like, trying to insist it's journals and publication that determines expertise. And then, of course, we have practitioners like myself. I would imagine you, I don't want to speak for you. On the other side, like, no, it's not just that. And I think, like, for me, it's kind of making me sad because I feel like it's an unnecessary divide. I think it's one where like everyone can respect each other and promote and uplift each other and recognize the gifts that each piece brings to the table. But it doesn't feel like it's going that way. And of course, as a practitioner, I'm a little angsty about it because I feel like we're often put lower than and academics are put on like a pedestal and the practitioners are put wherever. I don't know what that would be. Not on the pedestal. So I feel like we have to like fight for like be to be respected or heard or considered experts. So as much as I want to play nice in the sandbox, I also have this little bit of like fight inside of me too of like we need to defend ourselves and I'm trying not to be that way because I try to approach things open and curiously. But yeah, that's probably one of the biggest ones for me right now.
Well, and the thing is, one, I would say that's pretty timely with the ACE provider
Yep.
updates that the BACB just sent out that I was reading yesterday. And two, I would say the one thing you do at least have working in your favor is that you're a doctor.
I know,
That gives
but
you a
it's
lot
just
more
wild because like I
credibility.
don't get treated like by the folks who are in that academic sphere. I'm like an outcast because I don't check the boxes. I don't do the things that academics are supposed to do. So they like even though I have doctor whatever, it's like I don't they it still doesn't matter because I'm not checking the boxes, you know.
Hmm.
So
Well,
maybe I
that'll be
get a little more
interesting
respect than
perspective.
other people would, but I don't think it really helps me. And in some ways, it sometimes I think not I'm not trying. I know I have a ton of privilege. I'm a white woman who happens to have a doc who also was able to get a doctorate, so I recognize that privilege. And though sometimes I think it's like they look at me like you're not doing the things you're supposed to, you're an awful, you know what I mean. Like it's
Mhm.
like screw you kind of stuff. So and not that anyone said that, those are stories I say to myself, but it just with some of the publications, especially or the experiences I've had over the past like 5 years with shifts in people who engage with me and don't, it feels like because I'm not fitting myself in the little box I'm supposed to fit in, that I get really pushed far away from everything.
Hmm. Well, I'm excited for that topic in September then. You'll have to make sure to send out whatever articles you want people to read ahead of time. I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll do the
That's
homework.
Yeah, I'm hoping to finalize with Joe which Friday we're gonna do, and then I'll like send it and post about it so folks have time to prepare. My guess is it's going to be um probably well, I don't know. Yeah, we'll have to figure it out because I'm on like a cruise on the last Friday of September. So I know it's not that one.
Mhm.
But so one of the other Fridays, but I have to find out from him which one he wants to do. So, well, Nicole, it was great chatting with you. I'm glad you were able to hop on. You have a flexible schedule, so I wasn't just sitting here talking to myself, although I'm sure I could have done that for an hour or two. But
You definitely could have, but I'm glad I could join.
all right, well, I will see you later. Are you coming to our webinar tonight, do you think?
What time is it?
It's at 5. It's a different time because Karishma is in Australia.
Oh, okay. I'll have to see if I'm available at 5. If I am, I'll hop on.
Okay, cool. I hope your
Okay.
webinar goes well tomorrow. And like I said, if I can get this up, I'll put the link in the notes for folks to listen to as well. Joe's not here to do it, so I'll say it. Everyone, go forth and do better.
Bye.